Oi, oi, it's your boy, the Drew Dober of It's Never Been Moreover, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you after what some people are calling the worst UFC event of all time. I don't know if that's true. I've seen some bad ones, but it seems like the rest of everyone who hadn't noticed that the standard was slipping badly finally caught on when they had a bad card, well, had a bad numbered card, and then announced the UFC White House event, and it looks mid. I won't say complete shit, but it looks mid. I was talking about this on the Patreon episode last week because someone chimed in on my Oliveira video saying, Jack, please don't cover the White House propaganda card, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, brother, I don't give a shit what the Burger Reich wants to vote for. Charles Oliveira could be an outspoken proponent of clubbing seals, and I'd still love his fights. But even if I did, they've not given me much choice because they've not booked much else. The whole year, in fact, 5 months of shit events we've had. November was like the last good card. The whole year it's been, well, we're going to stack the White House card. Wait until you see what we got going on at UFC White House. Now, Donald Trump himself said like 8 title fights, and you knew that was silly because just imagine 8 fights going 25 minutes. You can't book that. It would be torture. But you had Dana White coming out and saying they're spending $60 million on it and so on. Oh, you won't believe what's going on it. And then they announced it, and it's Topuria versus Gaethje, which I saw someone call the equivalent of a mandatory title defense. And your other title fight, quote-unquote title fight, is Pereira versus Gane, which, you know, is going to be, oh, Alex Pereira, he's going to win a 3rd belt. He's going to be the triple champion. It's like, you've done all the work for him by giving him one fight against a striker who doesn't have any power, and you had to make sure that Tom Aspinall was out of the way and not give John Jones what he demanded so that Pereira could fight like the 3rd best heavyweight in the world for this belt. Then Sean O'Malley, who Corey Sandhagen has been asking to fight him on the White House card forever. They've done O'Malley versus Ayman Zahabi, which I like Ayman Zahabi, but no one's getting hyped for that fight. They've got Michael Chandler on there as like a thanks for all the dick sucking over the years against Mauricio Ruffi, who's probably going to kill him. Bo Nickel made it on the card, even though the kind of people who would be there saluting for this shit don't want to see Bo Nickel on main cards, and he's fighting Kyle Dorcas. Kyle Dorcas, boy at the podcast, but on the biggest card of the year, on the main card, okay. And then Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia, which is actually a pretty fun fight. But that is not like UFC 300. If you remember, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when UFC 300 happened, they booked fuck all through the first half of the year. And then UFC 300 happened, and then people spent the rest of the year as they booked fuck all, saying, well, this is what we have to give up to get events like the UFC 300. And it did my head in at the time. But now we're giving up good events on the regular to have one mid-event in June. So I don't know if my American listeners will be familiar with the phrase that the game's gone, but the game is very much gone. Gets even sillier when everyone starts blaming Dana White. Like, he is just, I mean, I've been saying this for 10 years, he's just a figurehead. He's been a figurehead since the Fertitas left, but he's a figurehead who just doesn't care anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't know anything about what they've been planning for this card. It's all Hunter and Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby, and they're just doing a shit job. Bring back Joe Silva. He was a horribly abusive man to fighters, but at least he made some good fights. So, like I said, people noticed, especially because this card that we've just had was not spectacular. I'm gonna... I don't want to be contrarian, but I am going to say if you're getting upset about the BMF belt and that not being a BMF performance, I don't know what to tell you. It's the same sport. Like, they do not have formal rules on how the BMF's supposed to fight. I've been saying forever the UFC should bring in some 4-ounce Muay Thai for when people want to watch Stand and Bang. And also just because they don't have enough good fighters, you could get some good kickboxers in. But they're not doing that. So we got the BMF title, which is a sorry you got taken down when you got your shot at the real belt. But before that, it was a sorry you never made it to a real title shot belt. But yeah, I mean, it's speaks volumes about how beloved Max Holloway is and what a great job he's been doing, that people forgot that this belt doesn't really mean anything. Like, they were like, oh, a BMF belt, that's supposed to be the guarantee of violence. I was very surprised by this fight because I thought, like most people, I thought Charles Oliveira gets hit a lot. Max has been looking just as fast and even hitting harder at lightweight. And his takedown defense was brilliant through his featherweight run. And if you remember when he got the short notice fight with Habib and then that got called off because he had such a bad weight cut, he was like slurring his words and shit. And Bisping called him out on it in an interview. And then you were like, oh, Bisping, that's not going to go down well with the higher ups if you get the fight cancelled. But they cancelled that fight anyway. And for the brief moment that fight was on, I was quite interested because I was like, Max has barely been taken down. He's very good, but both through his footwork and his actual takedown defense at preventing that from happening. He hits the body lots. He switch hits a lot. He's going to be an ask for Habib on the feet. I know that he's a featherweight. I don't think he'd ever fought in the UFC at lightweight at that point. But I was like, that's a pretty interesting fight. And I'd like to circle back and say, no, I was completely wrong. Because, man, Charles Oliveira just manhandled him. And I get the sense that Max Holloway was benefiting from being so massive there. Because as I was saying on last week's episode, or the Boycast, I was saying, you know what? He had a brilliant, like, one of the all-time greats run at featherweight, but I still would have loved to see him at lightweight at that time because now there are so many interesting fights at lightweight. And then you just get Charles Oliveira turn up and carry him like he's a baby. He did it to Jim Miller back in the day. He lost his first fight with Jim Miller back when he was like a shit-hot purple belt in jiu-jitsu, who, like, his striking was just throw hard recklessly with your chin in the air. And I don't think anyone had stopped him or even beaten him. And he fought Jim Miller, and Jim Miller knee-barred him. And was like, sorry, mate, I'm a legit black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I submit people in MMA at a high level. And then they had a rematch 10 years later, and Charles Oliveira looked like he'd grown half a foot. He just looks like a colossus, comes out and picks Jim Miller up like a little old man he's putting to bed, and then strangles him. But he did that to Max Holloway, which is crazy. I liked how he came out. He came out low kicking immediately because that is Max Holloway has had fights like against Jose Aldo and Justin Gaethje very recently where he's dealt with the low kicks very well. He stands in what I call his Wyatt Earp stance with the big bowed knees. Short stance, lead foot pointed out, knees pushed out, so that if he gets kicked, it's not going to buckle his leg in it or kick his leg across him and cause him real trouble. And then he checks the kicks as well. Like he's looking at them, but he's also putting himself in a position where if he misses the kick, it won't be as bad. But the low kicks work very well against Max because to do that, he has to take himself out of his bouncing in and out boxing stance. If you watch the first fight between Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, timing the low kick as Max Holloway jabs in is what does Max in. And in the second fight, Max Holloway comes out in that taller, shorter stance, and he doesn't get low kicked even half as much. So Charles Oliveira came out and said, no, I'm going to kick your leg if you stand like that. Threw two good hard kicks, had Max shorten his stance up. And then I think it was off a checked kick that he entered on his first takedown attempt. Just ducked in and clinched up with him. And in the second round, he threw enough strikes to get Max Holloway throwing back. He threw a couple of front kicks. Max Holloway front kicked back and he grabbed the leg. I totally thought that Max Holloway was going to win this one on the feet, but the thing I was saying in the pre-fight stuff was Charles Oliveira wants the fight on the mat. Max Holloway will never take a fight to the mat, with the exception of that Yair Rodriguez aberration. When you are the one who wants to wrestle and you know your opponent doesn't, you have the kicking advantage. You should be kicking all the time because if you're kicking and he catches it, he's probably not taking you down. If he kicks back because you're working at that range and that's the thing that's there for him, you get the chance to catch that and take him down, which is what Oliveira did in the second round. Lots of work on the back throughout this fight. I was watching some of Ryan Hall's more recent stuff on the back as a position in MMA. And he was saying something interesting that, like, we all know when we look at the back, I'm forever saying this now, look at the Cody Durden fight on this card, a great example. If you get the back in MMA, now most of the time you've given up all your strikes and you're probably going to get shaken off and end up on the bottom eventually. Because you have no options. You have the choke, and you're wearing big gloves that make your hands like the ends of a Q-tip, and the guy can just grab onto them. So if you don't get the choke immediately, you've got a lot of work to do. They're going to be holding on. They're probably going to be gripping your gloves because it takes a minute for the ref to actually notice. You don't really have any strikes. Maybe you can abandon the back and go for an armbar, but it's really telegraphed to do. Oh, big yawn thinking about this Derrida Baralho co-main event I've got to talk about in a minute. But the two strikes that do exist from the back when you're underneath your opponent. So, if you're on top of the opponent on their back, they're dead. That's the best position in all of fighting. When you're mounted but they're facing down, basically. When you're on their back as a backpack and your back or butt is on the floor and they're on top of you, you have two strikes. The heel strike, which Charles Oliveira was using to the thigh in this fight, but BJ Penn used to get the solar plexus with that, which is awesome. John Tuck has a TKO, I think it's a verbal submission due to that in the UFC. And then the other one is, as Ryan Hall was saying, 12-6 elbow to the back of the head, brainstem, which obviously two illegal things back when Ryan Hall was talking about that. They've now removed the rule on the 12-6 elbow. And I watched Charles Oliveira do this. He just elbowed him in the side of the neck, basically. I feel like that's not certainly against the spirit of the attacking the spine and back of the head rule. But the refs have been dying for ages to be like, there's a mohawk, and that mohawk gets slimmer and slimmer every time that a strike goes near it. But yeah, so 12-6 elbows were really good in this fight, both from the back and then when Charles got on top in mount, 12-6 elbows, which we talked about it maybe being a bit of a game changer from mount because no one really mounts in MMA anymore. There's not really much benefit. You'd get mount, the guy would grab you around the waist, and then you wouldn't be able to really punch down on him because his head was in your belly button. Then Diego Lopez mounted John Silver, and John Silver tried hugging his waist, and he just 12-6 elbow the top of his head until it split open. 12-6 elbow from mount really could do things, I think. It's a shame Glover Teixeira retired just before that became legal because he was the only guy really using mount and knocking people out from it at high level in the higher weight class. Or really, there's only about 3 people in MMA really do much mounting anyway. So most of this fight was Holloway getting dunked onto the bottom, giving up his back, fighting off chokes, getting his face squeezed, getting his neck cranked. Did not look like a lot of fun at all. He attempted a decent escape in the first round where he managed to pendulum his legs and do the Marcelo Garcia elbow post to try and get up to his knees. I think he gave up his back in the process of that. But for most of the fight, he was just stuck. There wasn't a lot he could do until the 5th round when he finally got up, pointed at the middle of the cage, got cracked, end of the fight. It's just, a little bit sad. But the takedowns by Oliveira were incredible. That step to the middle, body lock throw off the cage, which they used to call it the DC, but popularized by the AKA team. Body lock, step your knee in the middle, turn so that they go over that, and you can either throw them or run to their back as they throw their hands over to try and catch themselves. Or, as Oliveira did, get them hopping on one leg and then kick that leg out. And that's something that Khabib used to do while holding the single leg too, which is very cool. Pantoja does it out in the open as well. If you watch his fight with Usyk, he does that a few times. Power twist into foot sweep / reap. Really cool. So completely the opposite of what I expected as a result. I thought quick fight. Charles is getting smoked probably because Max's takedown defense had looked so good at featherweight, and Max's power had looked good at lightweight, and his volume and his accuracy. I mean, even when he was throwing here, when he was panicked because he was still trying to get in and get out without getting grabbed, he was still landing pretty well. Charles was fighting pretty defensively. He had the elbows up. He was trying to make sure that he was, he wasn't walking forward just tanking punches like he was against Mateusz Gamrot. But he was still getting clipped quite a lot. What's next? Who knows? Lightweight division is moribund. Best division in MMA, and they've just got no one new coming up. Co-main was Baralho versus Reinier Derrida. Not a lot to say about this. Reinier Derrida, I've always accused him of having no fast twitch muscles, but I do, he's very unexplosive, but I do think that he looked a lot like he did last time, where he looked slower just from all the training camps. He had a little break, but it wasn't a significant break. And Caio Baralho can strike decently. and his wrestling looked fine, and Dorina never really got anything going. Not a lot to say about it, to be honest. Raul Rosas versus Rob Font was... Everyone moaning about Raul Rosas taking him down and doing no damage. Same people in the same division, Love, Marab, and Umar doing the same thing. The old don't let the fight happen tactics. I mean, it's quite funny that I put out that Charles Oliveira video at the start of the week saying, like, we're using this fight where he fought Arman Tsarukyan. And the weird thing about Arman Tsarukyan is he's one of the only people in MMA who can still do ground and pound, like meaningful ground and pound. As in, you strip a grip, you posture up, you land a good elbow or punch, and then you recover from there, you know, whatever happens with your position and their position. You've got to give a bit to get a bit, or you've got to give up a little bit of control to land hard. And no one does it, except him and Macy Barber and Linton Vassell, who may well be retired now. Habib did back in the day, but everyone from his team doesn't fucking do it. If you watch him against like Michael Johnston, Edson Barboza, guys who are good at getting up, he'll pass their guard and then he'll go, right, I want to crack them now. And he'll stand up over them, maybe knee on belly, but he'll stand up, drop a huge punch or elbow. They'll get their guard back and he'll go, okay, well, I'll just pass it again, mate. No problem. Whereas everyone now fights like, oh, but what if he makes an incremental improvement in his position? Better lock my hands and hold him. And Raul Rosas was doing that, just like not letting Rob... I mean, Rob Font was actually working pretty well from the bottom, which I remembered. He's got a pretty good guard. He gets taken down a lot, but he's got a good, fun guard. But like I was saying in that Charles Oliveira thing, you are cultivating a good skill from the worst possible position. You're still at a massive disadvantage, and you're still losing on the cards if you're down there. You shouldn't be. Like, if you land like 2 elbows and they're doing nothing on top of you, you should win that round based on damage and effective striking. But that ain't how it works, sadly. There are a couple of cool things in this. Like, Raul Rosas did a couple of cool things. And he shot a takedown. Rob Font ran round to his back. So Rosas was in the turtle. He wrapped the leg and threatened to do what is called an outside funk roll. Look up Ryan Hall's video on it on YouTube, but quite a few people are playing with this now. There's that great lad from Ryan Hall's gym. Is it Vera? I think he's Ecuadorian, but he does that, and he's in the UFC. And Sandhagen does it. But you wrap their leg and you try and roll over on it and end up in this weird sort of funky leg entanglement / triangle choke territory. Well, Rob Font was like, no, and pushed back into him. So Rosas wrapped the arm and rolled back the other way and hit a Peterson roll or a fat man roll to take him over the top. It was beautiful. But Rosas is talking about a title fight now, and I think everyone's reaction was, come on, mate. You just about got past 38-year-old Rob Font. Oh, as an aside, another thing that upset people about this card was, like, not only does it feel like the UFC's not paying anyone and not actually putting fights together, they did a fucking AI-generated hype package with Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway staring down in AI, and they both look like shit. And you're just going, you're a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, I'm a Luddite regarding like AI anyway, just because I think like just pay fucking artists. But if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, you can hire an artist every day of the week to make hype packages for you, and it wouldn't look like shit. Or you can at least pay someone to watch the AI slop and edit it before you put it on the air. But nope, we are in the apps. I said it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I said all future UFC successes are going to come from cutting costs, not from producing great fights, getting more people in, interesting more fans. And it has absolutely been that. That's been their pretty open goal. Anyway, couple of good ones. Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson. I thought this was a lot of fun. This was a nice little study on the inside low kick. Well, we'll get into another one of those in a minute because Zhao Long took off one of Cody Garbrandt's balls with an inside low kick. But Drew Dober and Michael Johnson, very different fighters with very different styles, and they both approach that inside low kick differently. Drew Dober, very heavy kicker, and doesn't do a lot of kicking with his right leg typically because he's a southpaw who meets a lot of orthodox fighters. So he throws a lot of left leg power kicks. But against another orthodox fighter, he's throwing this step up inside low kick, and he was really smacking it in. And it was a nice contrast because there are a couple of schools on this. If you watch like a good Thai, a traditional Nak Muay, a lot of them will use the kick in itself as like a power technique because kicks score so well in that sport. And they'll either jab or just push their hand out in a frame and then step up into the low kick. If you watch kickboxing, particularly things from like an American influenced kickboxing style, they tend to like throwing the step up inside low kick and keeping the hands tight, ready to throw a jab as you step down off it. So that's what Michael Johnson was doing. He was throwing the inside low kick, keeping his hands coiled as he did so, and then pumping the jab as he came down off it. And it worked really well. He was landing his right jab off that inside low kick all the time. Gokhan Saki was amazing at that. He would throw an inside low kick and then come in with like a 1-2-3-3, body head, right uppercut, right overhead, like 8-punch combination, but built off that inside low kick as an entry. It doesn't feel as good. If you like kicking with power, you use your arms in your kick. When you want to do that sort of step up inside low kick to jab, you have to keep your hands there in sort of a weird robotic way that doesn't feel natural to people who are used to kicking with power. It makes you feel like you're doing strip mall taekwondo, but it works well. And Michael Johnson, Unk's got hands. He's still got the hand speed. Drew Dober was landing nice left straights to the body, which he obviously works really well if you're a southpaw versus an orthodox fighter. And Michael Johnson was cracking him on the chin with left hands as he was doing it. But Dober stuck to it, and actually Michael Johnson sort of lost his timing on those counters as the fight progressed. But this was one where Dober scored this knockout, and I went, that was sick. Cool sort of Toby Comey leaping in movement. And then I immediately went on Twitter, and my boy Sean Madden, friend of the podcast and just all-round ledge, coach down there. I think it's Elevation he's a coach at, but he coaches Drew Dober. And he had a clip of him doing this in anticipation of Michael Johnson leaning back for his big counter right hook. So, so when I say a Toby Comey, that's like a point karate technique. But anytime we're talking about covering a lot of distance, we end up talking about this stuff. But in Muay Thai, it's very common off like a fake teep. You pick up your lead leg and you just sort of jump in behind it. You float in behind that lead knee and you cover a lot of distance that you wouldn't otherwise. But the raising of the knee is like a feint. In tournament karate and stuff, you pick the leg up, and no one teeps in point karate, but you pick the leg up and you just sort of leap. And that's kind of what Dober was doing here. He picks his lead leg up, leaps, and goes slapping right hand, left straight, catches Johnson leaning back. I mean, it was just like the Usman Masvidal knockout. Leaning back, gets domed across the top of the head. Gorgeous knockout. Good fight. The lads really gave a good account of themselves on a card that people were not enjoying. Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira was bizarre because the whole first fight, Gregory Rodriguez was walking him down, and I was like, oh, I can't see this Bruno Ferreira guy. He just sort of like switches stances at random and spastically swings a single big shot at a time. And Gregory Rodriguez has been pressuring everyone, grinding them down, walking through everything. I can't see that. And then bonk, Bruno Ferreira hit him once, like in the course of a 2-round fight, hit him once and knocked him out. And I was just like, I don't understand. That's crazy. And then Bruno Ferreira had a few more fights and Gregory Rodriguez went off and did his own thing. They came back together for this rematch and Bruno Ferreira's backing up Gregory Rodriguez. And you're going, oh, I didn't expect that. And then Robocop hits him once and he just collapses on the floor. Teddy Atlas was out there talking about his, what he calls the wrong way punch, which links in with something that I've been talking about with Makachev and Prince Nazim. And I've just been recently watching some Costa Zoo. He does it too, but lagging the right hand, like squaring and throwing everything except the arm as if you're throwing the right hand, pausing half a beat and then letting the right hand drop and whipping it round. So that like the power is more from like the arm swinging, but you get the guy parrying or slipping before you actually throw the punch. Naz was really good at it. Makachev did it a couple of times against Volkanovski. And Zhu did it against Shambe Mitchell. But when Teddy Atlas is talking about the wrong way, I was revisiting one of his old instructionals after he brought this up, but he's talking about the same thing, like you move your body and then you pause and then you throw the punch. So you actually look like you're loading up the left hook, but then you poke him with the right hand instead. And yeah, I mean, it was a pretty simple punch. And Rodriguez looked absolutely bewildered that it landed to such effect. He was like, what? No, oh, come on, get up. I think he'd been waiting on his revenge for a long time and then was really underwhelmed by it. It's like when Renato Moicano choked that guy and then wanted to continue fighting. And the guy said, you shouldn't have submitted me so quickly. One of the best post-fight interactions in UFC history. Cody Garbrandt versus Zhao Long. Sorry, I quite enjoyed this Zhao Long lad. Got a really weird record because I was looking at his, looking at the Tapology page, going, this guy looks much better than his record implies. But he had a lot of losses early in his career, and then he put together a really good streak. Got on the Contender Series, lost to Christian Canones, who's been in the UFC for ages now, and then ended up back on like the road to UFC. He's actually on a 1-3 run now. But he lost this Garbrandt fight because he kept cheating, basically. But he just beat the piss out of Cody Garbrandt, but also kicked him in the groin about 5 times. I did like, though, how he was using the step-up inside low kick and the step-up lead leg kick generally, because that's quite a hard one to chain. Like there's a triple attack there. You can do a step-up body kick, you can do a step-up high kick, a step-up low kick. But because the low kick, the lead leg is so far forward of the body and the head, it can be quite hard to sell that convincingly, or to make them look the same in the way that would be really troublesome for people to defend. But he was doing a good job with it. The only problem is, especially with the step up inside low kick, if the guy steps forward while you're doing it, you will hit him in the nuts. George St. Pierre had this like 4 times against Matt Hughes in their second fight. And I think Usman Nurmagomedov did it against Paul Hughes in their first fight, kept kicking him in the groin. And it's not really entirely, it's not on the guy throwing the kick really, because you're sort of stepping onto it. He was targeting your thigh and you moved in and it hit your groin. In the same way, if you throw an overhand and the guy turns away and you hit him in the back of the head, you haven't really targeted the back of the head. But then we're getting into intentional, malicious, and that's the part of the rules that I hate the most. Because every referee has the freedom to just go, I know in your heart you didn't mean to gouge his eyes, John Jones. Anything else on this card? Dante Johnson versus Cody Brundage was just a stupid Cody Brundage fight, like normal. Cody Durden versus, this guy's name, Tumen Dembarel. Saw people talking shit about this one. I thought it was quite fun. There were some good moments in it. There was some nice grappling, bit of crackdown, some nice striking from Tumen Dembarel. I thought Durden, he has had a bit of fall off, because I remember looking at this guy going, that's quite a promising young fighter. And he looked just terrified in this fight. He just looked like he was thrown off by worrying about his opponent. But some fun scrambles, giving up his back, Durden would be in a bad position. He'd put Tumen Dembarel on his back and then shuck him off from the back, because if you can get the guy on your back and then you take away a lot of his strikes, you put him in a position that he really wants to be in, and then he gets there and he's like, oh, but I can't really hit you from here. And then you can either use him trying to come on top to get back to guard, or you can come up to your knees and shake him off. And Durden did that quite a few times. And then the other really interesting one was Alberto Montes versus Ricky Tercios. Tercios, he does strike like a crackhead, but his grappling is very flowy. Alberto Montes, saw people saying Topuria clone, and it's like, yeah, if you want to be a decently successful fighter, copy the stuff Topuria does. It's really good. Being able to jab and get down behind your lead shoulder so that you don't have to jump back out of range. You can, the great thing about Topuria's jab, and his brother does it too, is that they jab and then they're like, I'm here, I'm down behind my shoulder, you're going to have a hard time hitting me well, but I know that the moment that punch bounces off my shoulder or the top of my head, I'm close enough to chin you. And he did here. Alberto Montes did really well with his right hand here. That really basic scientific boxing, that is, my goal is to land right hands. How do I do that? I land the jab and I wait to counter. Or I land the jab until I can counter. Or I land the jab until he shells up and I can just throw the right hand for free. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that. You don't even need a left hook. But Montes, apparently famous for this anaconda choke that they were talking about, and I was waiting to see what he did different about it. I believe that the way that he is, I've seen a few variations of the anaconda choke. So one of the best guys to study for it is Rafa Mendes, who's anaconda choked a lot of very good grapplers back in his day, just a pure grappler. But this one looked like something that Neil Melanson teaches. Who did this? Oh, it was Chaz Skelly versus Maximo Blanco. It's one of the fastest submissions on UFC record. It's 19 seconds. And he grabs a guillotine, rolls him, and then punches through on the anaconda as Maximo Blanco's rolling. But the way that Melanson teaches it, and I really like this, is that he punches his. You got the arm wrapping the head and arm. You got the other arm that you want to like lock your hand in the bicep of, and if you do that on the side, they can bring their elbow back to their body and like loosen the choke. If you punch it through so that your elbow is in their armpit, makes it very hard for them to pull their elbow back and create space in the lock. So Chaz Skelly versus Maximo Blanco is a great example of that. And it was, again, here, it looked like he locked his elbow right under the armpit so that Tercios couldn't actually create any space. Really cool, really cool. So with people being so pessimistic about that fight, I would say there was a good Rizin on. I've only watched a couple of the fights of it so far. I'm going to watch the rest of it and talk about it on the Boycast later this week. But Rizin put on good events fairly regularly, and they've actually got a couple of good fighters now. Like they had Kyoji back in the day, but the lad who just knocked out Patchy Mix in their main event. I mean, Patchy Mix, he's had a weird career. Like but there was a point where he was beating very good fighters, even though he's sort of a one-dimensional fighter. And if you did think it was drugs or whatever, and he came off them for the UFC, lol. No reason he can't be back on them now, and he has performed well in Rizin in the past. And this lad Kyoma Akimoto smoked him, and his hands looked fantastic, and his counter wrestling looked fantastic. And I was trying to remember why I had never talked about him before. I was familiar with him, but I remembered that he's been sort of fighting jabronis. So his last one was against a 19 and 14 opponent. His one before that was against a 9 and 10 opponent. And he's a good, talented fighter. He was like 9 and 1 versus 9 and 10. 10 and 1 versus 19 and 14. And they were hyping him up. They were like, oh, it's a grudge match or whatever. And I'm like, no, he's a talented guy, and he's fighting like a jobber of the Japanese scene. And the one really good guy he fought was Yuki Matoya, and he lost that one. But he seems to be very talented, and he's coming, to beat Patchy Mix like that when guys like Mario Batista could not is crazy. So throw Rizin a couple of dollars, because they put on fucking phenomenal events. They don't use AI. They have real fireworks, and the shit rocks. I'm your boy Jack Slack. I'll be back later in the week to talk about whatever's going on. The UFC card this weekend actually looks pretty good. It looks better than this pay-per-view. So stuff to talk about there. I'll probably do a video, and I might do an article on the Patreon about something fun. I'm your boy Jack Slack, and I'll catch you when I catch you. End shitification until we finally lose some money, and then they try and make the product better again in a couple of years. Bless.